If you grew up with two mother languages, I bet you can relate to this video. There are many bright sides of growing up speaking two languages and therefore having two cultures united within you, but also many dangers and things that parents can do wrong that lead to many problems. I grew up, as we call it in German, zwischen zwei Stühlen, in between of two chairs. You can guess what it means. I grew up speaking Russian and German. My parents are from the Soviet Union. They moved to Germany in the 90s after the reunion, about which I'm super happy. I'd not like to grow up in a country like Kazakhstan. And so we spoke German and Russian at home. While traveling the world for the past 1.5 years, I noticed that I am not alone with this feeling of not really belonging anywhere. For instance, as a kid, I didn't want to let anyone know that I also speak Russian, to not give them any wrong ideas. And I was not really wrong about it, because I grew up in Germany, and so I am German. Of course, your household also have a huge influence on you, but I have never been in Russia, so I don't even know what makes Russian character traits. Though I have lots of Russian humor, because knowing the language is also knowing a culture, right?
Далеко-далеко, очкарик убегает, очень даже быстро, но его в подъезде ржавый догоняет, очкозавр пуха на ему.
Anyway, I am German because I act like a German in so many ways. And people told me that many times. So growing up in Germany with Germans whose parents were just Germans, while I was able to speak Russian as well, I always had the feeling like not really belonging, and this is also how people looked at me. Then I visited Moldova many times as a kid. Actually, I'll be going there in 5 weeks, which I can't wait for, because the last time that I've been in Moldova was 10 years ago. My grandma is living there and I haven't seen her for years. Anyway, in Moldova people also speak Russian, and it was the other way around over there. So people did not accept us and even called us Nazis. Anyway, I'm not alone with these experiences, because here in Australia I met a Slavic community. So now a brief history lesson. There was a big movement of people fleeing the Holodomor in the early times of the Soviet Republic, and they went to China. Well, but a couple of years later, there was a great leap forward, which is, in my opinion, one of the biggest crimes committed to humanity, because dozens of millions died in that big famine. And I'm actually very serious about it, because I lived together with people from that time. And the stories they told me, what they saw with their own eyes, what the Chinese government did at that time. If I just tell these stories, this video would be instantly either on age verification or would be taken down. Anyway, in the 50s and 60s, these Russian-speaking people moved again, but to Australia. Some of them also moved to America. Anyway, and I met lots of those people here in Australia, and there they have the same problem. The parents speak Russian and Chinese, while the kids, the next generation growing up here, only speak English and either very poor or no Russian at all. In my case, it's that my mother speaks very bad German, even though she lived in Germany for over 20 years. And even though she's my mother and I will never love any woman more than her, I objectively have to say this is a very weak result. Like, come on, mom. But that's alright. At the same time, we used Russian less and less because we live in Germany. And even many people from my circle said goodbye to Russian. And I remember for a long time of my life, I was also ashamed for the fact that I knew Russian. But I'm really happy that I preserved the language. Not everyone is a linguaholic like me who loves to study and sustain languages. So many thought I just don't need Russian, and therefore I will refuse to speak it. And then, as a result, there is barely any communication possible. I mean, between kids and parents. Parents don't speak the local language well, the kids don't speak their parents' native language. Now the question is, who should learn what? The parents the local language, or the kids their parents' native language? I think if you look at it just logically, the answer is very clear. If you move to another country, if you migrate to another country, you learn the local language. That's it. For example, I'm working with some Ukrainians at the moment, and their English is not the brightest, let's put it that way, which is not a problem. It's a problem if they refuse to learn English while living in Australia. Now, these Ukrainians know that I'm a fluent Russian speaker, and so often they switch to Russian when talking to me. But no, I'm not playing these games. I only speak English to them. Why? Well, because look at it. Who is more in need, them knowing English, living in Australia, or me knowing Russian, whereas I've never been in Russia and not planning to live in Russia. My attitude is just very straightforward. In the beginning, they even said to me, "Ты чё, стесняешься по-русски разговаривать?" And I just answered, "Мы здесь живем в Австралии, мы здесь по-английски разговариваем." It might be easier for them to speak Russian, but I don't care what is easier for them. I care what is better for them. Do you understand now why I am German? So now, I'm not bashing Ukrainians, quite the opposite, I get along with them very well. However, I have to use another example from back in Germany, where Ukrainians were considered often as very cheeky and arrogant. Amongst many reasons is that they were not very keen on learning German and even demanded to speak their language. I mean, like, imagine I come to Australia and say, "Hey guys, you all must learn German." What testimony of laziness and arrogance is that? But let me emphasize again, it really depends on the person, because it's the individual attitude that matters. I'm not painting all with the same brush. Just recently in church I met a Ukrainian guy who spoke fluent English even after having not been here for too long. And often one of those Ukrainian co-workers, he asks questions like, "Какая разница? Last time and last one?" And that just makes my heart happy, because I see he has the right attitude. He wants to learn, he wants to understand. Of course, the basic instinct is always to go the easy way. But let me tell you this, the weak pursue the easy way, but the strong pursue the hard way, which ultimately is for their best. Another aspect I have noticed, which actually even makes me a little sad, is to see how some communities only stick to themselves when living in another country. And as an example, I have to use the Chinese community. 我希望你们都已经知道了，我真的喜欢中国人，并且他们的文化。但是我也发现了一个很有意思的事情。I have noticed that especially Chinese people are not very open-minded and outgoing when living in another country. When I lived in Adelaide, I met two Chinese guys, and I was very surprised to hear that even though they live in Australia and study here, they barely speak any English. They built up their own Chinese community, their Chinese friend, their Chinese bubble, so they only speak Chinese to each other instead of switching to English for practice, and only go eating at Chinatown, and simultaneously complaining that they cannot improve their English. I want to underline it with another example. Just recently I started visiting a Chinese church, and I asked one of the guys, "Are you familiar with the problem that a group of people moves to another country? The parents don't really arrive, whereas the next generation growing up does, and it leads to miscommunication between both generations." And he said he knows the problem too well. Now, some might say, you can't really judge people like that. Some people are just not very interested in other cultures and languages. They don't want to dilute their own nationality. I strongly disagree. I do believe everyone should be open towards people with different backgrounds, because this is what makes us humans, right? Thus, I actually recommend everyone to travel the world, or at least to go to a country which is completely opposite of your own, just so that you can widen your horizon. And one of the reasons why so many people are so small-minded and racist is simply because they don't give a shit about other countries. And we honestly have to say that China is also very racist in many ways.
Really? Hello. Walking at this time was really a bad idea.
Obviously, because it is cutting itself off from the rest of the world, which leads to Schubladendenken, which is a very nice German word. Let me break it down for you. Schublade means like a drawer, and Denken is just your thinking, your kind of attitude. So it's an attitude of drawers. Oh, there is a foreigner, I put him in this drawer. Oh, he looks like that, I put him in this drawer. This is no good. Anyway, you can see that it's actually a blessing to have many cultures united within you, and I really enjoy that. In fact, I'm living in a shared house together with a Vietnamese girl, with a girl from Israel, with somebody from Colombia, with Aussies, and I really enjoy that. But it also can be a big danger, especially if parents force their lazy attitude onto their children instead of making sure that they learn the new language of the new country up to fluency. By no means I fully unfolded this topic, but I'm looking forward to reading some of your comments and your thoughts on it, and maybe I'll be speaking about it more in the near future. Alright, bye bye guys, auf Wiedersehen, tschüss, wale, das vidania, 再见.